This is Willpower.
Greg, the Hydrogen Man, welcome to the Willpower Podcast.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure. I'm excited to talk to you.
Yeah, there's a little bit of background that you and I have spoken about offline of me spending time in the world of molecular hydrogen, in the tablet world, and beginning to understand this first element on the periodic table. And really excited for the listenership today to get a good level. We'll do a couple podcasts over the course of the year that we continue to dive into this. And I really want to be able to give people some insight into hydrogen and some insight into your backstory. But I was just speaking to you offline saying, hey, it's the first element on the periodic table. Like, we still don't know a lot about it. Why? Why is that?
And I was just telling you because it's so magical. I mean, look, if you look at the human body, we clearly don't know everything about the human body either. So, and hydrogen it's basically everywhere. It's literally the building block of life itself.
Yeah, exactly. And
a lot to learn.
How did you sort of step into this? I mean, to be called Greg the Hydrogen Man, with the level of expertise that you bring to the table, how did you step into this in your life? What's your backstory and the connection to hydrogen and why you believe it's such a wonderfully healing molecule?
Well, the backstory is that I unfortunately got extremely sick and just had major medical problems, tried to push on through, being a stubborn guy and just trying to get through it. But it got so bad that I don't care how tough you are, nobody was going to get through this. I couldn't walk. The level of pain that I was in was a level 10. Even morphine didn't really make a dent in the level of pain that I was in. I couldn't even lift up a remote control to change the channel on a television.
And were you diagnosed with some things by allopathic medicine and medical doctors in the Western world?
They didn't really know the source of the problem, of course. Didn't give me any specific diagnoses, though I will say that I had a lot of problems. And some of them were diagnosed. Like, I had a heart condition. It was clearly diagnosed. I had to go see a specialist, a cardiologist. I was told that I needed open heart surgery and that I would not be living very long if I did not get this surgery. I also had inflammation literally all over my body. That's why my joints hurt so bad. It's one of the reasons I couldn't get up and walk. I'm actually the ones who found them. The doctors didn't, but I located some tumors in my body, which later were biopsied. And so I literally had tumors in some nerves. And that was causing a lot of my pain. And of course, my liver wasn't functioning as good as I'd like, or my kidneys, and even my lymphatic system. And so I would get really yellow, like my pillow would just be yellow. And it was just one thing after another. My blood glucose levels weren't the best, and just things of this nature. And it was a total nightmare.
Yeah, pretty scary time.
And a lot of GI issues too. My immune system was horrible.
And so you're sitting with these conditions and tackling the Western culture of medicine, as it were, and people telling you we're going to cut you open. And how did that lead you down the path to fall into the world of hydrogen and start researching it or looking into it and bringing you to where you are today?
Well, a lot of people don't know that I actually specialized and worked in the medical field for like 2 decades. And so I really had a very clear understanding and idea of the background, like what goes on behind the scenes. And so I knew I was in trouble when I had these problems, and I didn't expect the medical establishment to be able to help me much. But I still tried to go that route. And of course, it was pointless. It was painkillers, anti-inflammatories, things that were going to be very negative for my health in general. They didn't know a lot of the issues and what was causing them. They did spot the heart condition. And obviously, I spotted the tumors, and eventually, they eventually realized that I did have those. And so it was such a nightmare. And then I thought to myself, I have this personality. I'm actually pretty good at figuring things out if my heart is in it. And then my heart has to be in it. it's very difficult for me to try to do something that my heart's not in. I just can't do it. But if my heart's in it, not to toot my own horn, but I'm able to figure things out that a lot of people can't. I become quite proficient in a certain subject. And so I just dove into understanding the human body. What's the nonsense out there? I hate to say this, and I will say it first. I don't give any medical advice. I don't make any medical claims, but I know a lot of people have certain opinions about health, but I really look at the science, the data, and I look at things from multiple different angles to be able to verify or validate the correct direction, because I don't want to waste time going down the wrong direction and also waste the money going down the wrong direction. So eventually I stumbled upon hydrogen, and the science was extremely new. I was reading all the scientific data because that's what I was doing. I would look at data. I didn't really listen to people's opinions because I did that in the past, and it guided me all these wrong directions. You have one person saying, no, this is best. Some person literally saying the opposite is best. And it became very frustrating. So I became a real science data guy.
Yeah, and I want to say, like, I want to honor something too about you, is like you have a tenacity that not many people have, which is a super beautiful quality, is that you are, the way that you seem to dig into information and know all the pieces of the puzzle, or say, okay, here's the next thing and what's the next level, really feels, it feels beautiful for those of us that are not always research oriented in that way, right? So it's like the tenacity that you have seems to be born of the illnesses that were going on in your body, and you really having a strong desire, not just the heart in it, but the strong desire to maybe course correct and learn all about not just the human body, but, as we begin to speak about hydrogen. So I want to recognize that about you, because people probably have said to you more often than just me saying that you are tenacious and you are, pretty steadfast.
I appreciate that, because it is actually a comment. My family knows that I'm tenacious, but it has to be, again, a specific subject. And in this particular subject, I've even been offered money by multiple companies for all sorts of products these days. And I was always like, not going to be biased. I am going to go for what the best is. And I turned down plenty of money, but I'm always going to go for what's right, because I need to live with myself. And that's just, I want to be able to do the right thing and feel good about it. And so it was all about the data, all about the right thing. And I didn't want to argue, with people. I just went down my own path.
Yeah.
And it was hard to read the scientific data, and it was boring, and it wasn't something that was like exciting to me, but the reason that I became so tenacious is because my life depended on it.
Yeah.
And it was hard to get interested. I was never interested in this kind of stuff.
And then you stumbled upon hydrogen as a molecule, or just how did that weave into the data collection and the research that you saw hydrogen fall into the landscape, where you were like, oh, there's something here. It can be elusive based on the things that I've read, and there's so much around it now, but just it has been a bit elusive in the past. And many people who are listening are like, hydrogen, are we talking about hydrogen gas? Are we talking about like, what's the difference between molecular hydrogen, all of that? Well, those questions I think will come up. I had those questions in the beginning as well. So how did you stumble into that? And that, if you could create the differential for us so we understand exactly what we might be talking about when hydrogen in the landscape of all hydrogens.
Well, I was actually looking at all different aspects about health, and I really did become a water expert. I know about all water filtration modalities. I know the differences, what they can and can't do. I looked at diet, the scientific data, long-term studies versus short-term studies, because that makes a huge difference. And then I stumbled upon hydrogen. When I first read the first scientific data on hydrogen, I'm not kidding you, I literally thought it was a scam. It sounded way too good to be true. And most of the things that I've discovered along the way that sound too good to be true are usually not true. They're usually very scammy. They manipulate data, things like this. So I read the data for 3-4 years. Is roughly how long I was reading about hydrogen. Eventually, I was so desperate because I was suffering so much. And I was finally looking at this data, seeing where it was coming from, really taking more deep dives into it. And then I realized this stuff actually looks legit. And, the Japanese, it literally became medically approved. That was a big deal. When something gets medically approved, there's something there usually, not always, but especially something like this that they can't put in a pill usually. You really need what I would call medical grade hydrogen gas. And almost nobody talks about that, but it makes all the difference. I would say almost everything out there with hydrogen doesn't make medical grade hydrogen, in my opinion, but we can go into that later. And so reading that data is really where it all began. And I learned so much about it. And as amazing as it was or is, what I realized that became even more important was once I wanted to do it, once I'm like, okay, I'm going to do this, how exactly do I get hydrogen? You can't go to the corner drugstore and get hydrogen.
Yeah.
And to make medical grade hydrogen even harder. And I ended up having to learn not just the right levels, the right protocols, how to do all this, which took a lot of time, but also the right equipment, because you can make hydrogen through chemical reactions. I mean, heck, you can directly electrolyze water. There's different ways about making hydrogen, and some are definitely better than others. And that's how it all really started.
Yeah. Wow. So let's talk specifically about molecular hydrogen, the molecule, and just to give people some insight on it. We're talking about a liquid, a gas, a solid. Tell us more about molecular hydrogen. Just like, what is it?
All right. So this is, in my opinion, the simplest way to explain it. It's a gas, just like oxygen. Right now, I'm breathing in probably 20% roughly oxygen. And there's probably almost virtually no hydrogen right now that I'm breathing in. Well, actually, unless I put this guy on right here. I have my hydrogen machine right here.
Cool.
Heck, you know what? I might as well inhale while we're hanging out.
Put it on.
I mean, it's good for me.
Sometimes I've taken calls with the nasal cannula like that, and people are like, "Oh my gosh, are you okay?" And I'm like, "I'm more than okay." I know.
Always think
it's
that.
good though. Yeah. So you have molecular hydrogen as a gas.
Yeah. So it's a gas. Now, one of the interesting aspects, because when I look at scientific data, yes, I look at that, but I also look at nature. I learned so much from nature about how to take care of this human body or what the best is. And molecular hydrogen, basically the way that it's being done in nature, it's actually water is being used as a carrier. So what you're doing is you're dissolving the gas into water and you can drink the water. Kind of like soda pop, or carbonated water. It has CO2. It's a gas that's been dissolved into the water. So you can dissolve hydrogen into the water. Now, in nature, there's a place, and there's a few places, but the most famous one is a place called Lourdes, France. Have you heard about it?
Yeah.
And they're like, it's holy water. Why? Because so many people go there, they drink this water. They apparently have healed many medical conditions by drinking this water. And it was so prominent. And they were actually able to verify a lot of people who apparently healed from this water, that they sent scientists to study the water. Many people studied it. They found nothing.
And it was coming up out of the earth. Yeah. Coming up out of the, yeah.
So nature's doing it.
Yeah.
Right. And so nature's doing it, which is always intriguing to me. I always like to observe nature. I think it's a marvelous creation. And so when that happened, nobody could figure out what was so special about that water. And eventually it was the Japanese who figured it out. And what did they discover? That water had dissolved molecular hydrogen in it, specifically molecular hydrogen. Remember, there's other types of hydrogen. That's the way nature does it. So the Japanese started doing studies on this same exact type of modality of hydrogen being dissolved in water on animals. That's where it all began. I mean, I have footage. You should see some of the footage of the mice who did get it and didn't get it. And they're side by side in a cage with a wall blocking it. It's unbelievable. The things that you can see and the things that it's been shown to do.
Yeah.
And so the Japanese eventually created a device that mimicked that water and even made it actually even better, which is pretty remarkable.
Just more densely, like more, we say ppms a lot, but like more gas in the water. Is that what you mean by saying making it better?
Yes, that's pretty much it. It has higher levels of hydrogen and yes, higher ppm, but ppm has to be really cautious because a lot of advertisers and companies use that information. It's very misleading.
Yeah, and just to back it out for the listeners, ppm is parts per million, right? Science nerdship.
Yes.
Parts per million. Yeah, cool.
Yep. And I hate to say it, very misleading because it took me a while to figure it out. But it's important to know the right way. But yes, it has a higher level of ppm if made with the machine versus the way nature was doing it.
Mm-hmm.
But you can make the same levels as nature too with the machine that I'm using. It can pretty much make any of the levels from 0.1 to full saturation, which is 1.6 ppm. Ironically, they named the device after that place. It's called the Lourdes or the Lourdes Hydrofix Premium or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, the Lourdes Hydrofix. Yeah. So, and I've had a chance to be on the machine and, yeah, and feel some of the benefits from it. And also the fact that it's making water, molecular hydrogen water feels really beautiful to me because then when I'm sitting at my desk and I'm wanting to drink water and stay hydrated, I'm getting this sort of extra dose of this magical molecule that you've been talking about that we're covering. And what kind of results did you see from putting hydrogen gas and hydrogen water as well? I'm assuming, right? Because we've talked about both of this offline before, that you've drank the water and you've put the gas in your system. Like, what are the benefits from molecular hydrogen? And also, just I don't know if you want to touch on, hydrogen is out there and molecular hydrogen, just the difference between some of the other hydrogens and molecular hydrogen.
Yeah, there's there's definitely differences. I mean, some hydrogen's not good for you, as far as we can tell. Like deuterium, you probably don't want to have too much deuterium in you.
Mm-hmm.
Things of that nature. There's a lot of. I'm not a huge fan of something called Brown's gas.
Mm-hmm.
I know they like to claim it's hydrogen. Hydrogen's in there, but then again, you also have hydrogen in water. It's H2O. So it's a very specific, almost like type of structure or the way that you would do it.
Okay, got it. Yeah. And so what is it done for your health? Like, what are the changes you've seen, or what are the things that we sort of, that we've been able to check out in the research and the literature that is happening with some people? And what are things that you have seen personally in your own body and your own health? Because if anyone's just listening to this and you heard the litany of, dis-ease markers or things going on in Greg's body earlier, it's like, if I'm looking at him now and he looks young and vibrant and trim and healthy and fit and all of that. So it's like, tell me how you went from all of that to this, right? And how this passion grew because of those results.
Yeah, the things that I've seen, I mean, like even my dad was actually a really great example. But I've seen things from high blood pressure, high cholesterol, diabetes, actually even kidney disease, which is pretty wild because doctors say it's irreversible. Obviously with me, heart disease, that was another issue. The inflammation, they've clearly seen that hydrogen really functions as an anti-inflammatory, selective antioxidant. I've seen people whose metabolisms are completely whacked out, dysregulated, even with hormone issues. And it's been able to help balance that out. There's a woman, she's in one of my videos on my YouTube channel, very large woman. Her metabolism was all messed up. She got on hydrogen, but didn't change anything. She openly admits that she eats very unhealthy, out of the microwave, soda pop, just lots of stuff. And she lost I don't know, if I remember correctly, 40 pounds or more at this point. And she didn't change anything. The only thing she did was do the hydrogen. And there's clear scientific data when you get overweight, it actually confuses the body. And it really messes with your metabolism. And so hydrogen appeared to really help balance that out again. And for me, it was kind of a miracle too. From my inflammation to my pain, even my eyesight was weird, got better. The same thing happened with other people that I've known. But the big one that surprised me a lot was the heart condition. My cardiologist couldn't believe it because we were getting scheduled for that heart surgery and I wasn't sure if I wanted to do it. I was pretty scared to get cut open. And I mean, I was scared to death. And when he checked me before the surgery, all of a sudden, magically, my condition was gone. And I had had that condition for a very long time, years and years and years and years. And so that was also pretty an amazing one. I've been working with people who have TBI, brain fog, different brain conditions, Alzheimer's, dementia. I'm actually completely shocked the results that I've been able to attain by speaking with people. One of them was so amazing. It's actually a really beautiful story. This woman called me. She could barely form a sentence. She would literally forget her own name. And it was so bad. And it took me so many hours of trying to help her because my heart was really going out to her. And she called me back like 6 or 8 months later. I didn't even recognize who it was because the way she was talking was so smooth and coherent. And before she would always stop and she'd forget. She could never finish a sentence.
Mm.
And she said, "Hey, I just wanted to call you. I wanted to say thank you. You saved my life." And I was like, "Who is this?" I didn't even know. And she just told me, which I didn't know. She said, "Just so you know, I was actually going to take my life. I couldn't live like
Wow.
this." And I prayed before I wasn't in my life. And you popped up. You popped up on some show or something like this. And she said, "When I heard you, I just felt it. I just knew it." And she's very intuitive, apparently. And so that's why she contacted me. She was doing my protocol. And now she's infinitely better. And
Yeah.
she said it changed her life. That's why she said it saved her life. And now she's alive and well, living her best life. And the company, which is called Holy Hydrogen, they have their own YouTube channel too. And they interviewed her. So you can actually see her interview. And she did a podcast with them, sharing her testimonial. And it's just, those are the kind of things that fill my heart with like joy. Because in life, I know that people like things like big houses and fast cars and lots of money and all this stuff. But the thing that brings me the most joy is when people are happy, when people are
Yeah.
doing well. And it's just what fills my heart with warmth and joy. And I was so happy for that woman. And there's so many stories like that. I post a lot of them on my YouTube channel. Hydrogen's
Yeah.
just so beautiful, so amazing.
Yeah, and you've gotten to be known as, I mean, Greg the Hydrogen Man. People are coming to you as a one-stop resource for looking at all the different things that are out in the marketplace, looking at machines, looking at tablets, looking at all the things, and having conversations that are really open and honest about what works, what has efficacy, what is can work fairly, what can work inexpensively, and also what's BS, right? And this is the challenge in the biohacking space too, right? I mean, it's beautiful
Yes.
to be able to see the anecdotal and the stories, like both your personal story and the anecdotal stories of people you've worked with and recommended hydrogen to, and talk to them about your protocols. And I just know from, doing the research and working a bit in the industry myself for a while, the understanding that there's like therapeutic efficacy in 2,000 studies and 170 different disease models and all of this, right? Like there are a luminous amount of studies and pieces of research, definitely and notably sometimes hard to pick through because, scientific research in the literature is not easily digestible, and we could read through all those and people would fall asleep on this podcast. But the reality is when we get to see people have change in their diabetic state and their, with a heart condition like you spoke about, with weight issues. And what I like to believe also is like people need a gateway, right? And perhaps the gateway into stepping into better health, right? Perhaps, in my opinion, like putting down have your treats once in a while, but putting down the 2 liters of Diet Cola or cola and like putting down some of the packaged processed foods and things like that. They start with something, right? In my world, sometimes it's like putting someone in an ice bath gets them to go, oh, okay, I'm opening the doors on health. I can see how I can feel better and boost my mood and all of that. And in this world, it's really like, how does this molecular hydrogen lead us down the path of better health optimization, right? And the thing you mentioned earlier is just really talking about this medical grade, right? This naming it medical grade hydrogen, and why that's important, because we see this in the supplement world all the time. There's a lot of false advertising or just really good marketing, right? In my corporate era, when I worked in consumer packaged goods, I was always amazed to say, like, even things I'm hailing from Austin, Texas, most recently before van life, and it's like in Austin, Texas, they talk about Tito's vodka, it's gluten-free. And it's like, cool. And most alcohols are gluten-free. So it's like you can build a brand on a lot of different statements in the marketing world. And we get to hydrogen. And number one, it's a complex element, right? First element on the periodic table, lots of different ways that you can ingest it.
Yes.
There's water and there's tablets and there's gas and there's some more and more conversation growth around this landscape, which is beautiful. And then we turn to this piece and it's like, why do we have to talk about medical grade hydrogen? And and I believe you'd agree with me that it's like when we think about things we're going to put in our body that are going to hopefully have a positive effect on our health, we have to think about the other things that are aligned with what we might be putting in our body, right? We're really just making a decision autonomously, but if we base it all on marketing and we don't look at some of the anecdotal evidence and a lot of the literature and reputation that's in the marketplace, it's like muddy waters we're trying to make clear. So I think that
tricky.
exists in the world of hydrogen, so much. There's so many options. It's not as about good or bad. Yes, you do a good job of peeling away all the marketing BS and saying, look, this is something that's not effective at all. And then also focusing on this piece you talked about, which is medical grade hydrogen gas. How do we get it? And why medical grade makes more sense for our bodies overall than utilizing anything else, right? Because it's the punchline of the conversation around this Hydrofix machine, which is so cool. The punchline is it seems to be really helping a lot of people with a lot of conditions and bolstering optimal wellness in something, specifically if you're using the water, that you need to get a ton of every day. We need to be hydrated. And the punchline being that sometimes you get what you pay for, right? This is not an inexpensive machine, but it's a highly effective machine that functions dually, which is like an important thing I want to just share about the Lourdes Hydrofix. When I've used it, I've both inhaled it and I've drank the water from it, and it's really easy to use. But I want you to elaborate a bit on the medical grade piece and why understanding and knowing what you're using and what you're getting is a super important thing for anything that you're ingesting.
Well, I will say it's actually sad for me because I've fallen in love with hydrogen, and I'm not particularly happy with the world of hydrogen. The marketing, the devices that I would personally never use. That's all I'll say. I'm not going to say anything negative. I'll just say, me personally, I'll never take the hydrogen pills anymore. Did I take them in the past? Yes. After seeing after seeing lab results, let's just say I don't personally I'll never use them again. I'm really cautious about things that use chemicals, things that use lye, sodium hydroxide, main ingredient in Drano, plated metals, which almost every Chinese device, because almost all hydrogen machines come from China.
Yeah. And just to back that out at a 10,000 foot view, these things you're talking about, some of the chemicals, some of the plated metals, some of the things like that, in order to put hydrogen gas in water, there has to be either in nature or through some sort of device, there has to be a reaction to make that actually happen and mirror what we saw in nature, what we've seen in nature with getting hydrogen into gas or water. Is that correct?
Yeah. See, the thing is that you can make hydrogen pretty inexpensive. I mean, you could literally hook up electricity to water, run the electric current through water, release some hydrogen. The problem is
please don't do that at home. Don't hook up electricity to water at home.
Yeah, please don't do this. In order to make, let's talk about what therapeutic grade, in my opinion, or medical grade is versus non-medical grade, because nobody wants to talk about this in the hydrogen world because it's going to expose their potential products or whatever. But this is important. This is how to understand it, in my opinion. If you go to a hospital, do they have oxygen tanks? Of course, they typically have oxygen tanks. Sometimes you need oxygen for certain reasons. Not all the time, though. People should understand this. But that oxygen is medical grade oxygen. What does that mean? It means that it's the highest purity. It's all about purity. Now, if you go to a place that does, let's say a place where they're welding cars or doing some type of welding, they have oxygen tanks there too. Do you think that's medical grade oxygen? No, it's not. And it's not as pure. I just straight up call it's just dirty. You do not want to inhale that kind of stuff. And that's the kind of stuff I see out in the market. The devices that are making oxygen and hydrogen that is not of the highest purity. Mm-hmm. And I became extremely grateful. One of these days, I hope to meet him. The guy who actually was responsible for developing the Lourdes Hydrofix premium. This is a Japanese gentleman. His own daughter was sick, really sick. They told him, she'd be lucky to make it to the age of 5 years old. She was born with ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease. Such a sad story. But he knew the hydrogen would help her. Based on the data, he's like, I know it'll help her. But he wanted to develop something so good because he was really thinking about her. So he didn't want to think about money, which is unfortunately what most companies think of. And I get that. I understand. It's business. But they end up outsourcing things to China. They cut corners. and then you don't end up getting as good of a product. And he went all out developing this machine that uses no chemicals, no plated metals. I mean, just the best hydrogen. In fact, it's so good. There's a guy in Japan who's a doctor, one of the top doctors. This guy's like neurosurgeon, neuroscientist, super, super intelligent guy. And he says he definitely uses hydrogen. He knows the data. He's actually a hydrogen specialist. So he really is using this stuff medically. So he's a true professional. And he doesn't do interviews like this because he's an actual practicing physician. You see a lot of people doing stuff out there, but they're not actual practicing physicians. This guy's a professional. And he literally said there's only one machine that he recommends for his patients. He doesn't trust any other machine. And that's the Hydrofix.
Yeah.
He said, it's made in Japan, it's lab tested, it's certified. He's like, it's the best. And then he says it's the only thing that he personally uses. And that, to me, this was a very big deal. Now, I ended up learning things from him by reading about some of the stuff that he said, that the purity of the hydrogen is of the utmost importance because hydrogen goes past the blood-brain barrier. He said, if you're using something that's not really pure, and plus when you inhale it like I'm doing right now, we're talking straight to the brain. So purity is extremely important, you know, and the stories that I hear sometimes of people who do it, in my opinion, the wrong way. Like I just had a story 2 days ago. I'm not kidding you, Kristen. It broke my heart. Like I was literally going to break down in tears. And I won't name the company. I won't name the product or whatever. But I can say that it was a Brown's gas machine. I'm not saying what company, but it was one of those devices that use chemicals. And they were telling people that it's safe to get the babies, which by the way, is, there's a lot of things you don't want to get babies.
Yeah.
Little kids, pregnant women. I mean, they were telling them that it's safe. And this poor woman took her child and put her on this thing, who was fine. He wasn't even sick. She just thought it would be good for his health. And she made him extremely sick. And those type of things break my heart because I hate to say it, it kind of reminds me of this weird verse. Maybe I shouldn't bring this up, but it just reminds me of this weird verse in scripture where Jesus says something along the lines like, if you're going to hurt little kids, like anything you do to little kids, you're literally better off tying a rope around your neck and a stone to the rope and throwing yourself in the ocean. That's what Jesus said. I was thinking, whoa, that's pretty heavy, right? He's literally telling you to take your own life if you're going to be hurting kids. And so, you know, I feel the same, sad to hear things like that. But when you can do good things, when you can make a hydrogen that's so clean, it does appear actually that you can totally give it to. I did a testimonial recently about a woman who was pregnant. She had 2 kids without hydrogen, and her 3rd pregnancy, she did hydrogen, in my opinion, correctly. She used a correct device. She did everything correctly. And her testimonial was amazing. Her baby, the birth, the health of now, her breastfeeding. I mean, these are the kinds of things that I like to hear and see, not the ones where people end up having, you know, sad stories.
Yeah, for sure. And the other thing is just, you know, really being able to translate what the gas is doing at a cellular level. Can you talk to us a little bit about that? Because it's like, like we get to see these stories, and I've seen some of them myself as well, things that are from skin conditions to other neurological pieces. And I think backing out to just say, you know, because this is like a complex molecule, but backing out to say it's not just in Japan, but in many places they're using, you know, doctors are using medical grade, highest quality hydrogen gas in surgery or in different operations that they're doing. And so this is something that's been used by the medical community that we have not had access to as, let's just call ourselves householders, right? Non-patients. We haven't had access to that. And, you know, that piece and the way that it's channeling and changing people's health and how they're utilizing this to bolster, you know, especially the antioxidant qualities to bolster people's healing, I think is something that now we have access to. And it's like, this is why it's like, how do we talk about this in a way that feels like a touch point to householders? Like, how does the gas actually affect the cell in the body?
Let me put it this way. I personally believe that our body needs to have certain levels of hydrogen to be healthy. And that goes for a lot of things. Proper levels of B12, proper levels of vitamin D, I won't go down the list, vitamin C, B6, like I won't go into all the different nutrients. It's
Yeah.
important that we have all these building blocks to this structure. That's how I actually figured out how to heal myself. I wanted to find out, what does this body need to be at the top of its game, running on all cylinders, hoping that that's what would resolve my issues in regards to my health. And it's been dramatic, obviously. And so hydrogen, I think we're deficient in it in some ways, because our body it does produce its own hydrogen also.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is, I actually think that a lot of our lifestyle things is inhibiting our ability to produce proper levels of hydrogen. And we know
You mean like
scientifically,
environmental and toxins and choices we're making around how much stress we put upon ourselves every day? Yeah.
and the food we eat.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
for sure.
all these things play a role, because I've learned about the importance of fiber. And not just like some fiber supplement, okay? I'm talking about the actual food, because I've learned through, again, scientific studies from Japan, and the rest of the world really doesn't know this yet. And they're going to find out. They're just so far behind usually. Japan is light years ahead when it comes to health research. They're amazing. But I can tell you that every fiber from every fruit, vegetable, nut, seed, bean, they're actually all different. They don't just fall under one category. It's more complex than that. And that's just one thing. The other thing that we've learned about hydrogen from research in Japan is, as you age, you make less and less hydrogen. And so again, the biggest results I've ever seen are usually with people who are older. I mean, there was this one lady who was like 95, 96 years old. The results were unbelievable. So because their body's crying for it. It's like, we need this, and so
levels get lower as we age of hydrogen, and you're saying that the hydrogen gas can be partially be made in the body because of some of the foods that we're eating and the chemical reactions that are happening inside of our body.
Usually the bacteria in our GI,
Yeah.
but also our cells make the tiniest amount.
Yeah.
It took a long time for scientists to discover that in Japan, because
because
moment it
it's
was
the smallest
made,
molecule, or because because research costs a lot of money.
well, I think it's both.
Yeah.
But when it would be made, it was immediately used. So it's very difficult to detect. And a lot of this even has to do with exercise. So exercise is really good for this too. And even with performance, they did a study on, it was like semi-pro soccer players in Japan. And this is a big deal. In scientific research, if something works 80% of the time, it's deemed a huge success. Like if you give all these people a pill, it works 80% of the time. In this research that they did with the soccer players, 100% success. Every single athlete improved. It's clear as
was
data.
that water or was that gas? Do you remember?
It was the hydrogen water.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. And it actually appears that the hydrogen water, I'll tell you what I figured out in my protocol, that everybody eventually realized that I was right. I know it sounds like I'm tooting my own horn, but I'm not trying to do that. But what happens is, originally they thought the gas was the best. Oh, hydrogen gas is going to be the best. Then the research kind of started showing that the hydrogen water was actually better than the gas. But it doesn't mean the gas doesn't have benefits. Then I created a protocol that eventually was copied about 3 months after I showed it on my channel. Because a lot of people watch it who I know are stealing my info, but oh well, that's what it is. And you consume the water first, empty stomach. Then you inhale the gas. And it enhanced it. It made it work better.
So it's like already in your body. So your body's like sort of set up the vehicle for receiving the gas.
The reason, yes, but I won't go into all the details of how my thought process and how I discovered this. I'll just say that the body worked better when it was properly hydrated, especially with the hydrogen water.
Yeah.
And the gas became more effective. Now, granted, you got to be careful with this. And I always tell people this because there's people who have equipment that I wouldn't personally use. And this was a sad story because a woman did this. She was starting to be told by one company, again, I won't name any names. They told her, hey, you need to start drinking the water first before you inhale the gas. So everybody started copying this method. But then what ended up happening was, because of the equipment she was using, it actually caused her kidney failure. And that was a very sad one. She ended up in the ER because the way that machine that she had was making the water was basically leaving a residue of a chemical And that's why I don't like chemicals in anything to do with hydrogen. It's a bad idea.
Right. So let's talk a little bit about this machine specifically, right? Because it's like I've seen a lot of different hydrogen delivery vehicles, let's just call them that, on the market, and done a lot of, my own deeper dives on understanding it being the smallest molecule and crossing the blood-brain barrier and supporting people's health journey. And, the benefits of this machine and the benefits of utilizing something that is not just, creating highest purity medical grade hydrogen, but why is this machine, the one thing I will say is we had this conversation offline that I was like, there's this piece of metal that's on the machine and we talk about, there's a reaction with the metal. Is that getting in the water? Is that hurting you? And just why everything on this specific Lourdes Hydrofix is made, it's like over-engineered, right?
Yes.
It's like it's engineered. It's like I always say this, delivering a pizza with a semi-truck. It's over-engineered, but in a way that it's ensuring that we're not getting anything else, right? That's the thing, right? There's other byproducts with some products on the market, and this happens in the world all the time. It's like why we were all putting our favorite lotion on our face, and then they're like, oh, here's 6 ingredients that are actually cancer causing that you've been soaking your face in for, the last 5 years on your favorite lotion. So it's like, what other ingredients are, were in there? And so what are the pieces and parts of this machine, which, by the way, if anyone's just listening in, it's about, I would say like it's about the size of, it's like it would show up in a small shoebox maybe, right? It's like highly portable. The cool thing for me is I'm excited to put one in my van because I've used one before in the past, and I'm going to put one in my van. And if I can roll around with it in van life, and it's pretty portable, pretty well designed, not too heavy, right? There's anyone who's listening to this who doesn't know about hydrogen gas could even assume like, oh, it's the medical community. It's a huge medical device that weighs a lot, cumbersome, awkward. It's none of those things. Just talking about, parts of the machinery or the equipment, and like why it is so over-engineered, or just what makes it so effective and actually not dangerous for us in any way.
This is I love that you brought this up because that's exactly what I loved about it. And that's actually a lot of what I love about the Japanese in general. They over-engineer engines. They over-engineer buildings. They make us strong. They make quality. They make them reliable, like Toyotas or whatever,
Yeah.
And I love that this guy just he I remember one thing he said: outsource any of this to China. I do not want China having a hand in this because they're going to screw it up somehow. And even though it'd be more expensive, it was maybe not the best financial business decision. But that's what I love, that kind of thinking.
But this is the doctor who invented this, who really founded this, and because his daughter was so ill, probably didn't want to cut any corners anywhere, I imagine. Yeah.
That's exactly it, and that's why I loved it. But the more I learned about hydrogen, the more that I became, or at least machine, and learning about all the other machines and trying a bunch of them. I mean, I actually made myself sick from other machines. And so because
you've tried all these things right along your journey on this health journey, you've tried all the different compartments and ways of delivery vehicles of hydrogen. If anyone
Absolutely.
wants to see also your YouTube channel, what's the YouTube channel name? Just say it out loud so we know.
It's Uprising144K.
Yes, Uprising144K. So you can watch a lot of reviews and Greg shaking the trees talking about all of this. So you've used a lot of these machines, and if you have curiosity around the other things that exist in the marketplace, you can check that out there. And you landed on this machine.
Yeah,
give us the vibe, give us the differences.
I landed on this because it was the best, and that's what I wanted for myself and my family. Eventually, I did share this with my family eventually, but this is what was so unique about this one. First, the metal technology they use. No hydrogen machine in the world has this tech. In regards to metal, there's only one company in the world that can even make it. When this guy originally wanted to design this machine, he went to this company that was they were experts in these type of metals. And even they told him, what you want us to make is impossible. They just couldn't do it. Eventually they made a breakthrough and he was able to build his machine. So that was
the metal component of the machine is where when the water comes in contact with the metal, this is where the reaction happens, correct?
It's extremely important, the metal that you're using when making hydrogen. For example, like you'd never want to use stainless steel. It's cheap. but you wouldn't want to use it. But a lot of people do it because it's cheap and it's easy.
And why don't you want to use it? Because it has it off gases something into the water as well.
In my opinion, that's one aspect. But the other big reason that the Japanese learned through the science of metals, which is very complex, it causes microscopic degradation of the metal, which means that although a machine can maybe make hydrogen for the first 3 months, 4 months, your hydrogen production actually goes down in time. The thing is just falling apart.
Oh, wow. Okay,
and especially when you use chemicals, because most people use stainless steel. On top of it, use a chemical, like, again, sodium hydroxide lye. And it makes it fall apart. So that's not the right metal to use. And just when you do metal, plating metal, now you're going to be most likely flaking this stuff off into the water. And so they usually plate it with platinum. Now, a lot of people don't know that platinum appears to be toxic for your body. It's not good for you. In fact, you make drugs for cancer out of platinum usually. So, for example, if you've ever heard of a drug called cisplatin, and it's toxic to a tumor, but it's also toxic to your body.
Right. So, like, why they put it in there, right?
Yeah, why do they do it? Because we use a lot of toxic things for cancer, like chemo and poisons.
Yeah.
And so they did not want to use plated metal. They did not want to use cheap metal. And then on top of it all, the guy wanted the metal to be a certain structure. Again, even more complicated, because the structure, apparently they have to have like people, like craftsmen who make this metal. It's handmade in Japan by professional, like a samurai sword. You can have a great metal, but you need a guy to do the workmanship, to work those swords. And so they have those guys. And so the metal's a masterpiece. And it allows it to also make, like, in my opinion, from everything I've researched, the best nanobubbles in the industry. So super tiny bubbles, which makes the hydrogen even more effective as far as everything that I've learned and researched. So that's why the metal is so important. But the membrane is extremely important too. The membrane that they're using in this device, nobody in the industry is using it either. Not one company is using this. They all use, membrane from stuff that I personally wouldn't want to use. Let's put it that way.
Right.
This one is a Japanese membrane, and it is very clean because I recently saw lab tests again. I'm not going to name products, but I will say that I saw the lab tests on these membranes that are being used were showing positive testing for PFAS, which is the forever chemical. I don't know if you've ever heard of PFAS.
Yeah.
Nasty
I think
stuff.
more and more people are learning about forever chemicals too, because of lots of the consumer products that are out there having them in them. This is why we went to BPA-free bottles and our water bottles that were plastic and all of that.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that was important. So they have this very unique, super high-end membrane that nobody has or uses. Too expensive.
And what is that? The membrane's function on the unit is to do what?
Well, the membrane allows pure hydrogen to come through. And then the metal's making the nice nanobubbles, but nothing else coming through. And you don't want oxygen. You don't want ozone. The reason that I actually found this device was because when I was reading the scientific data, when I was looking for equipment, I wanted it to line up to the scientific evidence. I didn't want to get something that was different than what they were doing in these studies. I wanted the same
for sure.
thing.
That's so important. Really important point, Greg.
That's
really important. This is, yeah.
And that's actually how, when I finally stumbled upon this device, everything was just like the lab test. And I thought, what the world? Like this almost seems like too good to be true. So I had to take a deeper dive, because I discovered that a lot of companies were putting false information about devices. I mean, I literally would read some stuff. I'm like, this doesn't even make sense. It can't possibly be true. And eventually, some of those companies went under. Some of those companies basically got in big trouble, with all these people who bought their devices because they figured out they were being lied to. So it was very tricky. And so I would contact all these companies, and I would try different devices, and I would ask questions. And I quickly realized that people didn't know what the heck they were talking about. So these companies they didn't even know the right information. And when I did contact Japan and I talked to the company of the Hydrofix, oh man, I could tell instantly these guys were so knowledgeable about hydrogen. They did know what they were talking about. It did line up with the data, everything. And then I actually started learning things from them that I hadn't thought about. And then, of course, I would try to make sure that the information they were giving me was accurate because I'm a skeptic. They told me things that I thought, oh, really? Come on, really? And when I would research it, they were right. And so I was able to learn even more from them. I mean, this guy, the guy who really is a true guy who made this thing. Absolutely.
This is the founder, right? This is the neurosurgeon who uses is Dr. Akiko. I know we butchered these names. Apologies in advance, but Dr. Akiko Adachi, he's the one who is using it and is sort of like stamped it with a golden seal saying, this is the only one that I'm willing to use, who's sort of a specialist in this area. And then, can you pronounce the name of the guy who's the founder?
Let's see. The guy who created his name is, I'm trying to remember. His name is Shizawa. That's all I remember. And then Dr. Adachi.
Yeah.
Yeah. So these guys are absolute next level. I mean, it doesn't even come close. And so I was very impressed by that. And of course, that's when I tried their device. And actually, I had used other devices. And my heart condition never went away with the other devices. It went away after using this device for, I think it was roughly somewhere in the 6-month period it took.
Yeah.
But it was this piece of equipment that did it. And that's when I knew, and I was feeling different too. I was like, there's something different about this device. And of course, I've just continued to learn all these years. And I opened my channel, my YouTube channel, for multiple reasons. But one of them was because I knew nobody was doing the research I was doing. Nobody out there was talking about the stuff I would talk about. Nobody talked about the importance of how to make it. What might be the wrong way to make it? That hydrogen might be harmful, potentially. Like nobody was talking about this.
Yeah.
And so there was a lot of learning, and I thought my channel would hopefully help people, because to me, it's one of the greatest things you can do on earth to make you happy. And my little secret is this is my secret thing. Since I was very young, I've always wanted to find the things that bring me the most happiness and joy. It's just always been a thing for me, because who doesn't want to be happy? I mean, it's like the greatest thing in the world. So.
Yeah, for sure. And I want to like honor how much research and how much you've just pulled apart the research and then looked at various different machines and pills and powders and all the things in the world of hydrogen to try to explore them. There's hydrogen bottles on the market where we see like a water being held in the bottle. And I think I want to just touch a little bit on that, like some of the different things that are out there, right? Like I've seen pills and I've seen different styles of machines and I've seen hydrogen bottles that I think I think you can hold hydrogen water in a specific style bottle, right? If we drill this all the way back to like the water conversation a little bit, just for listeners, there's this thing where there's like, okay, there's pH, a lot of companies talking about pH of water, but then packaging in plastic, and plastic is porous enough that that will shift in a bottle. You're not going to be able to maintain any of that efficacy. Now, I know there are also companies that package in like a metal bottle with a specific liner, and they may be doing all of those things. And then also glass bottle companies that may put your hydrogen water in here and it will stay. Because just like soda pop, this is a great analogy you made earlier, just like cola, when you crack open the can, it's like really effervescent and fizzy, and then it's a little less fizzy and a little less fizzy. And eventually, if you leave it out for 24 hours, it's flat, right? And hydrogen, I believe, is like you really only have, a short period of time before the bubbles are gone. Is that true?
Yes, absolutely. It actually depends on the type of gas you're using. So oxygen or maybe ozone will stay in water longer because oxygen's heavier. In fact, I'll show you this analogy. I love this one. Let's say we have water. It's H2O. H2, molecular hydrogen. O, oxygen. Okay, when you separate them, oxygen actually just drops to the ground. Imagine taking a balloon and blowing it up and you let it go. It just drops to the ground. But what does hydrogen do? It ascends. It's what I call the ascension molecule. It's not just for your health. This stuff is literally spiritual. Just like the holy water of Lourdes, France. In my personal opinion, right? People don't want to believe it, that's fine. But even the light of the world, what we call our sun, a star, is made of hydrogen. So hydrogen is magical, in my personal opinion, right? And I even have a video. It's one of my favorite ones. I think it's video 68. I have most of them numbered. They literally show live blood analysis and how your blood moves. And on this particular study, they used normal water and you could see what it did to the blood. They took water from the Hydrofix and gave it to this woman and then showed what it did to her blood, it's
Mm.
so unbelievable. I mean, literally so unbelievable.
So like you're seeing the cells be less sticky and a bit more free flowing and just like it looks like a healthier blood, or just what happens to the blood?
Although that's true, the way that it moves,
Yeah.
the way that the blood, and just note, I hope people understand this. One of the keys to health is the movement of your blood.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. The reason people get dementia is lack of blood flow, proper blood flow. Okay. Blood flow is so important. It even is actually has to do with the temperature of our body.
Mm-hmm.
That's why little kids, have you ever seen little kids running around in a diaper? It's cold and they're warm somehow. And then you see an old person who's super cold and it's like 90 degrees or something, their joints are cold. Blood flow is extremely important. And you take in that hydrogen and you should see how that blood flows like a river. It's awesome. And we've seen in studies, I actually showed one of the studies. They did a thermo imaging study. It's a medical center in Japan that does research on Alzheimer's and dementia. And when they were using the hydrogen, increased body temperature, blood flow, baby. And that's what you were seeing in that live blood analysis. So anyway, it's exciting. I get all excited about this stuff.
Yeah. That's so awesome. Really great stuff. I think I'd like to talk about, just sort of like as we unwind this, I think we've talked about some of the benefits, but what are the biggest five biggest benefits of getting the right device, if people are using the Lourdes Hydrofix, it's by a company called Holy Hydrogen, holyhydrogen.com. And, we're talking about this machine a lot because we both have a love for it. And I know you have a big love for hydrogen and the properties of molecular hydrogen that can bolster our body in a way that it learns to heal itself better, right? I think that's the key is putting hydration and this water and being able to utilize the gas so easily with the unit. But really like the five biggest benefits that come with using, it's like the so what principle. I've been doing this a lot lately. It's like, Kristen, cool, there's a machine, it makes molecular hydrogen and it's going to help me be a little healthier. Like, so what? What are the five, and it could be 4 or 5,
Okay.
the 5 big benefits.
I'll throw out my personal opinion.
Yeah.
First of all, I do like that it's anti-aging. Really cool anti-aging study showed that using it for 1 year reversed your biological aging by like 5 years. Something like that. As far as your blood. Because in Japan, they do a study where they look at your blood and tell you what your age roughly is. So that was, anti-aging is awesome. Really good blood flow. I mean, that goes for absorbing nutrients properly in your body so that, so you're not have nutritional deficiencies, things like that. I like how it accelerates recovery. So if you're exercising, if you're a runner, if you're a hardcore trainer, especially people who take impacts to the head. So whether it's football, boxing, MMA fighting, anything where you take blows to the head, I think hydrogen is going to change the world in regards to something like this, because there's a lot of people who are athletes or people who've been through that. And you look at these old football players and now they can't, their brains are all screwed up. Any doctor will tell you the head is not being meant to be pounded on.
Yeah. Like
so
they've
that's
dealt with a lot of traumatic brain injury or impact. Yeah.
Absolutely. The whole idea of dementia, Alzheimer's, or staying sharp in the brain. I love that feeling. I love to be able to recall everything that I want to recall and have a good memory, these type of things. So I really love that. And probably one of the most powerful ones, and there's so many things, but I like the way that it protects the body, or the way that it appears to protect the body. I would say watch video number 8. I literally show how cells that are exposed to like radiation, people are talking about 5G, cells being exposed to like chemotherapy or very toxic stuff, and how they're affected. And then they did the same test when you add hydrogen. Night and day, hydrogen appears to be so extremely protected. And I know that we're surrounded by chemicals. There's things in the air, there's things in the water, there's things in our food, there's stuff in our clothes. I mean, it's everywhere these days. It's so insane. And because I value my health so much now, I mean, I can't say enough how much I value my health. It is the number one thing. Because without my health...
We all should. I think it's like, your health is your wealth, right?
Absolutely. If you don't have that, who cares if you got $1 billion or if you got a Lamborghini you can't even get into because you're hurt or whatever. Health is so important. And so I love the way that it protects our cells, protects our DNA, protects our body. It appears to be good for oral health, like your gums, your teeth, your eyes, your brain, your blood, your bones. I mean, I just love that it protects me. And that's actually one of the reasons I called it Uprising144K. It was really weird that the first study I read, I literally thought, man, this stuff looks like a guardian angel. It literally looked like it's guarding and protecting the body, the blood, the DNA. And
And
so,
if people are dealing with things or conditions or, dis-ease states already, and of course there's some capacity for the protective quality of hydrogen water, but also people who are already showing up to the game saying, hey, I want to add something in. I have got mold, I've got other toxicities, I've got environmental stuff, I've got Lyme, I got, there's so many things that are becoming more and more prevalent in the world when it comes to dis-ease states. For people who are thinking about like adding different styles of healing modalities or, support mechanisms for the body to heal, what does this make sense to layer in as well? Because it's not just protective, it's doing things on the backside, or like this is what you saw from a results standpoint. I imagine you talk about your disease states prior and then how things shifted in the body.
And the thing that I noticed about it is there's a lot of things we can do for our health, but in my opinion, there's certain things that are just absolutely foundational. And to me, foundational is clean water and cleaning the best hydrogen. And then it's like all your nutrients, and then you get into all the other things. But to me, it's so foundational. Everything that we do for our health, this ends up bringing it all together. And obviously,
I would put like water and light and sleep in a category like that. Super foundational. Yeah,
absolutely. And you should even see some of the stuff I've seen about sleep and hydrogen. And I won't get into it today. We'll talk about next time. But again, something super amazing. My own personal part of my protocol is inhale the hydrogen before you go to bed and enhancing the healing that happens at night while you're sleeping.
Yeah. And what if people, just from a protocol standpoint, right? The holy hydrogen, the Lourdes Hydrofix has the ability to make the water so that you can drink it. Like throughout the day, if I'm like running around the house and moving a lot, they have ability to, I could drink the water when I was utilizing the machine at home and soon to be in the van. And then if you're sitting and working, at your desk or whatever, you can have the gas. So understanding that both of those things come within the unit and they work interchangeably. So you can either make the water or you can make the gas and then inhale it. And if there's a protocol that you look at to say, hey, I'm going to get the machine, I want to get started with it. Is it like something it's safe to use every day? Or, is it just inhale it at first? Or, where do they start?
The only thing that I would caution people with is if you're on high blood pressure medicine, if you're on, let's see, any diabetes medication, or if you have some kidney problems. Because if I had kidney problems, like I would definitely stay away from the pills. Like absolutely. Or the machines that have the lye, the chemical. Even more so. Because let me just say it's a bad idea, in my opinion. The purity, obviously, we already know it's important. I like that the water does make the water and the gas. And the reason that I was saying be cautious if you have some of those issues is because let's say you have high blood pressure. And let's say it's so high that you take pills to bring it to here, which is where it should be. But let's say you start using hydrogen and it starts resolving potentially the underlying issue and starts correcting it. But because you're taking the same amount of medicine, now your blood pressure is too low. And I've seen this multiple times. So if you're going to use hydrogen, I would say that remember, no medical advice, but you'd want to observe your blood pressure, because if your blood pressure starts going too low, you're going to talk to your doctor and he'll probably back you off the medicine. And I've seen this so much to the point until people literally get off the medicine.
Yeah. So you're just saying titrate it. And if you're going to put a protocol in, don't like come out of the gate all hot over correcting right away. Because I'm in generally good health. And so I was like, okay, great. I can drink the water every day. It's fine. And I didn't ever have any kind of, contraindication or anything come up with it. But you're just saying out of the gate, it's a great device. And also, like, if you're dealing with taking some other medications or any medications on this, it's probably a good idea to chat with your doctor to be like, hey, I've incorporated this thing into my life. Let's make sure that we're just keeping an eye on it. Not because there's any issues with the machine, but because what you've seen and witnessed with people is that course correction in the body and then needing to understand how to titrate their dosages. Yeah.
Absolutely. That's exactly what I've observed. The lady who I did a video on, a large lady in a wheelchair, her doctor did monitor her and he was like lowering her blood pressure medicine. He was lowering some medicine she was on for her heart. I believe some statins that she was on, like all these different things that were either being lowered or eliminated.
Yeah.
So that's a big one. And of course, if you have kidney issues, you have to limit how much water you drink. So you can't just start gulping down water. So just things like that. I would recommend watching my video 337 is a good one. I kind of talk about how I would use hydrogen.
Cool.
I would highly recommend a machine to watch video 426. They made the machine very easy to care for, but I made my own video because throughout the years, I've learned like little mistakes that people have made with their machines.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if you take good care of it, it's like a Toyota. It's going to last super long time. But there's just little mistakes that people make. Like, it's like if you had a car, you put gasoline where the oil goes and by accident, you're like, oops, that's not where it goes. I just ruined my engine or whatever, So those are really good videos to watch.
Yeah, amazing. That's so great. Yeah, and because there is a cost associated with the machine, of course, and then they've been wonderful enough to say, if you use the name of the podcast, Well Power, you can get $100 off your unit, which is awesome. Always like to throw a discount towards the people that are listening and wanting to lean into their wellness optimization. So that's really beautiful.
Absolutely.
I like to wrap the show a lot with just asking the question about, other biohacks or advice you have for people that, of course, we've talked a lot about this holy hydrogen and the Lourdes Hydrofix machine, the water and the nasal cannula that you can inhale, the hydrogen gas as well. But there's other things in your life that you might be doing, to talk about from a biohacking standpoint or an advice on the health landscape. You've given a lot of great advice for people for sure already, but what's like hot for you right now?
All right. Well, there's always different things. I'm really big on cleaning my water to a super high degree, because every single water filtration modality in existence, like carbon filters, gravity filters, reverse osmosis filters, they don't filter. And again, I look to nature on how to do that. But basically, the way that I do it eliminates all viruses, all bacteria, and then, of course, PFAS and all the other stuff in water. And it's the only way to eliminate everything out of water. And that's what I call a carbon distiller. Now, just to let people know what I personally use, they don't have to do what I do, but the website for the products that I use are from a website called mypurewater.com. If they want a discount, they don't have to use the code, but if they want a discount, they can use the code Uprising144K. That's the water that I use. And that to me is a huge biohacking thing, because I've seen the lab tests on the water, especially throughout the nation. It's darn right scary, the stuff that we're putting into our body. And so cleanest water is a big biohacking thing. I do saunas, absolutely love saunas.
Awesome. Great. Detox, and little cardio, mimicking cardio.
Yep, absolutely.
Cool.
And just sleeping in good hours and getting really good nutrients. I'm really big on not having any nutritional deficiencies. Most people do have some nutritional deficiency form or another. And I had a funny story about that, which I won't give you the whole story. I'll just say a doctor called me after doing blood work, and she was just blown away by my blood. She's like, I've never seen blood like yours before. She goes, how can you have no deficiencies? What exactly you're doing? And the science, this is why I do it, because of the data, that's best to get the nutrients from something that is a food. So not just some pill that's a multivitamin. So I use a powder that's not even intended to be a vitamin, but it's actually kind of a meal replacement thing, but it's all made of food. I won't give the name of the product or the website if you don't want, but the point is, that's something that I found that I use that really works well, because the body and our ancestors, they always got the nutrients from food. And so the body responds good to food. So anyway, some of those are my...
Yeah, that's really a great point. Just like staying out of the processed world and staying off of just pills. I mean, Lord knows I take so many supplements, but also like against my blood and lab work, and I vary them and I research and source. Anyone who's listening to this podcast for more than one episode knows I research and source and try and test all the things that, just like the Hydrofix we're talking about here, to make sure that like it's on the up and up. It's not marketing BS. It's got some efficacy. There's some credentials. There's some literature in the science world around it, labs and research and all of that. And I think that's a really important piece. We're not eating, we got to find the powders that are made from the good stuff and have no fillers, and we've got to eat whole foods. I always take my supplements, unless they're designed to be done on an empty stomach, I take them with food, because then the hope is they will be more bioavailable and they will absorb more into my system. That's super
Absolutely.
cool. And then just a shout out to the EWG website, which is a place where I think when people are looking at their water and thinking about water, it's like, well, how bad is my water? And there's an org, right? This is like not for profit org, that's ewg.org, that I started looking at that website, and every city I have moved to, and I certainly don't do that in the van now because I'm moving so frequently, but if you take a look at your tap water, you'll see that there can be some gnarly stuff in there, and what's coming out of the faucet isn't always really amazing for you, as you and I both know. And so finding a way to do some kind of filtration, whether it's what Greg suggested, digging in and researching more of that, and then utilizing that water in the Hydrofix so that you are getting the purest, cleanest, best water you possibly can within the machine. And yeah, over the long haul, this is like if you think about how many glasses of water you're drinking in a day or how much you hydrate, and you divide it into spending a little budget money in your family and your household for a machine like the Hydrofix, I think, it comes down to just, pennies a glass. And so
Actually, it's really weird. When I first saw the price on it, I was, of course, like, oh my gosh, that's expensive. But in more research and time, I realized it's actually extremely cheap. To make medical grade hydrogen is actually extremely expensive, at least back in the day when I was researching this. To
yeah,
make it this cheap and get water and gas and follow all the stuff that they were doing, these scientific studies, it ended up and being so reliable and
yeah,
lasting so long, it actually ended up being the cheapest way of making
yeah.
hydrogen from everything I learned. So it really became a no-brainer for me.
Yeah. So awesome. Super thankful to have this time with you and dig into sort of the basics on molecular hydrogen and talk about the Hydrofix as our favorite unit to use when it comes to making and inhaling and drinking the molecular hydrogen for healthiest benefits for the body. And more to come on this. I think there'll be some other things we can pull a little bit of nerdy research about specific conditions that have been studied against hydrogen water and hydrogen gas, and just, go down the rabbit hole in part 2.
Sure.
Yeah, Lord
Absolutely.
knows
That'll
there
be
is
fun.
a rabbit hole on molecular hydrogen for sure. I
Absolutely.
appreciate you taking the time with me today and navigating your life and mine so we could be together in this moment. And also just, yeah, thanks for continuing to advise people and work from a heart-centered place in sharing the benefits and your love for all things hydrogen. Greg, the Hydrogen Man, is here. We've done it.
Well, thank you so much, Kristen. I really enjoyed talking to you as usual. And I just hope that everybody found the information helpful. And I hope that it helps people out there more than anything.
Yeah, beautiful. And then we're going to drop in the show notes information on your YouTube channel and where they can find holyhydrogen.com and the Hydrofix and all of that. But you just give a shout out to if they want to contact you, follow your YouTube channel, just tell us where we can find you.
You can find me on Instagram, but I don't put a ton of stuff on there. You can find me on Twitter, but I also don't put a ton of stuff on there. But where you really find the most data is going to be YouTube, which
Yeah.
it's all free. I don't charge for anything. So it's Uprising144K. On Rumble, there are some videos on there also. Contact me
Beautiful.
directly at uprising144k@gmail.com. Sometimes people want like full consults, or they want to, consult with me about something or have questions. So I do my best to get back to everybody. I always tell everybody, include a phone number, because sometimes I literally will call you.
Yeah. Greg
But
likes the phone. Let's be clear. Greg likes a phone call.
I'm very
It's
old
good
fashioned.
because it's in the moment, right? And then you can like share your story and hear more and ask good questions, and then it's not a lot of back and forth. So there you go. You can contact Greg directly if you have any deeper questions or anything, curiosities, or you want to see some of that research. We're going to put a bunch of the links in the show notes. And of course, the Hydrofix will be on my shop, wellpower.life/shop. And yeah, get to that YouTube channel. Your YouTube channel is quite robust and lots of information there all around hydrogen, easily accessible, free educational tools, and all the insights you could ever want from Greg. So appreciate you sending love out your way from my van life to your beautiful nature background that you have there.
Well,
And
thank you so much,
we'll
Kristen.
speak again.
Absolutely.